I'm happy to be back. It's really exciting. I know that you have the introduction.
Yes, please. Hello, everyone. Anara, please.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anara Tabashaliva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any question for our guest. Today's guest will be introduced by Dr. Victor Fett.
Thank you, Anara. Welcome, everyone, to week 219 of MUkraine Marshall University Discussion Group. And we are glad to welcome back our contributor from New York, psychologist and poet Galina Itskovich, who will talk about some insights from meeting unique witnesses to our shared history, from the current Ukrainian war veterans to the liquidators of the Chornobyl catastrophe of 1986, 40 years ago. Please, Galina, welcome.
Hello, I'm happy to be present. I had previous very productive encounters with this group, and I just want to thank you for what you've been doing, for what you've been continuing to do during all this time. And let's hope that the group will come to a close one day, because we will come to the victory in this war. But for now, I would like to talk about my recent professional and creative adventures. I haven't been here for quite some time. A lot happened during this time. One of the events that happened to me professionally in relation to Ukraine was my presentation at the conference in Baltimore. It was a conference dedicated to traumatic studies, and it happened last September. I was, ironically, as you know, I'm located in New York. However, I represented Ukraine in that conference, and I was able to talk about the online groups that we continue to run during all this time. We will be celebrating, quote unquote, celebrating 4 years of running a multimodal support groups for parents of autistic children and young adults. And we also have a group that is being run with teenagers who are the autistic teenagers. And these are all people from the frontline towns and cities. One group is Kherson, another group was located in Drushkivka, which is the east of Ukraine. And we were working with them to help them relocate over the summer. Last summer, fortunately, we were successful. We did not lose any of them, even though there were many close calls. So that was extremely important that it happened. It was extremely important that we relocated them, but still these people lived basically in the line of fire during all these years from 2022. And that's what brought me to the conference. And this is just a chain of events that I would like to describe. Other people on the panel were my Ukrainian colleagues, and also some people from the US who worked remotely with them to help support veterans, to help support people who just came back from captivity and also implement certain somatic techniques that would help them. So it was very close to what our group is doing in terms of philosophy. But what resulted was the invitation to join a group, and let me share my screen right now. This group is the group that's called International Center for the Study, Prevention, and Treatment of Multigenerational Legacies of Trauma. And that's a long name, but basically the person in charge of this group, Dr. Yael Danieli, is a famous traumatologist and psychohistorian, somebody who was instrumental in developing the whole approach to psychological trauma and intergenerational trauma. So the last endeavor of this group, and it has work groups for different ethnic groups, for different cultural groups, including the Ukrainian work group. So the last endeavor was this webinar I would like to talk about briefly, Chernobyl at 40, commemorating the 40th anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster. I remember that day. I don't remember that day, but I remember the days that followed. And I remember this sense of unrest around me in Odessa, and then people arriving. After 1st of May, there would be refugees who would arrive to Odessa, people who were trying to escape the nuclear cloud, and people who were rapidly developing symptoms. I personally knew some people who developed painful, unpleasant symptoms, respiratory issues, pain in their throat. People were suffocating, basically choking. And some people described kids who would arrive and kids whose hair would come out in clumps. So we did not know what was happening. But when I look back, before I go into the webinar, I want to take this opportunity also to talk, right? So when I look back at our internal history with the Soviet Union, I think it would be really appropriate to apply the theory of codependency. And codependency is a big part of what was happening in our relationship with the country where we live. Codependency is a very murky concept. Codependency talks to the nature of their relationship with their addict, but also with the abuser, because addiction is the well, I don't like the medical model, but I believe the psychological model of addiction, which tells us that the person receives the satisfaction from doing it over and over and over again. So what's happening, people who become codependent on somebody who is dependent on a substance or on inflicting somebody else pain, become addicted to the addiction, and they start putting somebody else's, that other person's needs above their own. And basically it gets them to the point that they're stuck, feeling helpless, feeling constantly frustrated, never meeting the expectations of that abuser, the substance abuser, or just abuser. And that becomes a condition in its own, just feeling stuck. And it starts affecting other interpersonal relationships. It starts affecting person's sense of responsibility, their functioning in the society. And well, the whole theory of codependence speaks a lot about healthy boundaries. So we lived in a country where we had no healthy boundaries, and we had, most importantly, we had no trust. In being abused, we all kind of got addicted, most of us got addicted to being abused. And it felt normal. It felt like that was a norm of the life. And just recently, I listened to a webinar that commemorated the Russian Victory Day, May 9th, and they also spoke about this constant abuse coming from the government, this constant disrespect and disdain for people. And this is the same situation, same issue that repeated itself in 1986, where the disaster happened, but people were not important. People were totally not taken into account. People were secondary. So back to the webinar. As we were preparing, we were trying to put together speakers who would talk about the long-term effects of Chernobyl. But also, we thought that it would be nice to hear from some witnesses. And like I said, today I will talk about like long links, chain of events, or rather separate links that would comprise the chain of events. So let me go back to January of this year, when we were dealing with a catastrophe with the Ukrainian infrastructure as a result of Russian shelling. And we did, as we always do as a group, we did a couple of fundraisers. And at some point, I figured out that I had more money that I could utilize for different groups that we have relationship with in Ukraine. And I turned around and I found another group that looked reliable, that looked like they were working directly with people. They were delivering person to person. They had a whole network of volunteers in Kyiv, and Kyiv was particularly suffering this winter. So as I reached out to that group and just offered help, what I got in return, I got those invaluable connections to the right people. So right people always come my way. And these were exactly the people who could speak at the webinar. One person who I met remotely was in Kyiv, and her whole family took part in liquidating the Chernobyl disaster. And I will let you listen to that person a little bit. Another person who I also met through some other people affiliated with that group was Boris Klurenko, who was the former deputy director of the blog that was at question, the one that got damaged. And he was the person who was in charge of evacuations and in charge of a 4-year effort to mitigate the effects of Chernobyl, immediate effects. So I will be, well, I brought some other people on board, but those two witnesses, I think, are very important. And I would like you to listen to snippets of their presentations, if that's okay with you.
Sure, go ahead.
Два.
Again. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
We see the screen, yes.
Yes, okay.
Атомной станции образуется возможно образование критических масс.
Sorry, let me try again.
Зараз я хотіла би запросити до виступу пана Бориса Конуренко. Будь ласка, в екран і мікрофон.
Yes, I know. Yes. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get rid of my second iteration. Let me try again.
We heard the sound all right.
Okay, yes. It's just that you hear the feedback. Right?
Right now we hear you well, and we heard the footage sound also well.
Oh,
Only
okay.
it was in Russian though.
In Russian?
Or Ukrainian. It was not in English.
Interesting.
Добрый вечер. Прошло 40 лет после аварии. У меня перед глазами не дымящийся реактор, а наш прекрасный город Припять, город энергетиков.
Okay, today is not my day. Yeah. For some reason the subtitles stopped working. Okay, I'll try a different way. Or maybe we'll just abandon the I will abandon my efforts to show you snippets of the presentations. But basically the presentations allowed us to see what happened, and also to, unfortunately, get okay, try from the subtitles on. Okay, I don't know that subtitles on. It's interesting because
Subtitles
I can hear it in
are
other
still in
places
Russian. So,
English, yes.
but if you just scroll and show us the images, it would be okay.
Yes, that's
And
what I will do.
comment on this.
So what's been happening? That this person who actually was not working there at the time was pulled back in from the governmental orders because he knew the station, he knew how things worked, and he knew what to do in order to liquidate the disaster. Also, he was in charge of evacuations. So he was there answering some tough questions, that people still have. Who was to bear responsibility? Who was to blame? Because people continue to kind of go through those blame issues around Chernobyl. And people who were present also wanted to know whether it came from the station, from people who worked at the station, or whether it was some sort of a bigger issue, the malfunctioning that was basically built in. And Mr. Knurenko gave us an answer that yes, the malfunctioning of the station was not the not professional work of people who were in charge. It happened on a very different level. It happened on the level of the whole design being ineffective. And this design was replicated in other stations as well. So basically, once again, it spoke of this lack of care, lack of consideration for people, and so-called, which you just saw on those pictures, peaceful atom was not peaceful at all. So it was all done at a huge cost to the areas, to the people, and people who basically never came back. It's really interesting because somebody else spoke at the webinar, the person who is right now working at the station, at the ground zero, around ground zero. It's Denis Vishnevsky, who is the head of the scientific department at the Chernobyl Radiation Ecological Biosphere Reserve. So these people continue to work even now in the zone of alienation. And they try to understand how the redistribution of radionuclides works in ecosystems. So it's really interesting that the nature kind of rebound and nature survives, but people definitely cannot live there and cannot come back to these areas, at least not within our generation. We also heard from the radiobiologist, who's also the researcher at the Institute for Safety Problems of Nuclear Power Plants. I'm telling you all of that because it's important to know that these issues continue to be important and seminal, by the way, not just to Ukraine, but also to Belarus, who suffers until this day with kind of results of the Chernobyl disaster in terms of the nuclear effect of nuclides in the water, in the soil, in the air, and with people responding to various to it with various medical issues. So it continues to be important. Ukraine continues to work with these issues despite of the war. And basically, in a way, Ukraine actually finds itself in the very interesting position because they become at the forefront of our understanding how we can coexist with the nuclear power that is being used throughout the world. And also Ukraine happened to be at the forefront of the war and methods of war in the 21st century, this whole drone war. I'm sure that you hear a lot about that with great presenters that come over from Ukraine. So this is a very interesting position vis-a-vis the modern world that somehow Ukraine continues to bear. And this is huge responsibility. I think that this is the way to kind of leave this codependent relationship with Russia. Russia, for now, continues with everything that it inherited from the former Soviet Union and holds on to those values. And those values are the values of the somebody who's addicted to the abuse. I'm looking at it from the psychological perspective. I know, but I think this is important in understanding the philosophy of what's happening. And Ukraine is getting liberated from that mindset and trying to move to agency, independency, independent thinking, and taking responsibility for actions. Because the video doesn't work, we can open the floor and we can probably hear from people here who also probably were present in Russia or Ukraine or Belarus at the time, and also saw the effects or felt the effects themselves, or just heard, because it's really interesting to collect those narratives. Those narratives right now are priceless because this is an opportunity for us to understand how fear and learned helplessness shape our relationship with the authority, with the government, with the country that we live in. I think that this is a big lesson that we continuously need to learn and relearn. Any personal stories? I'd love to share the story of Alevtina Malawoka, who was at the time in charge of the station of I don't know how it's being called in English. She was the senior engineer of the physical and chemical department of the sanitary and hygienic laboratory, Sanepidstanция, on the Republican level. And she was just thrown, I love this Russian word, thrown there, bрошена. And that was the mentality. That's my lesson from all of that, that people were thrown into those circumstances and they were expected to fight. Whatever she talks about, whatever she reminisces about is her journey when her husband, her brother-in-law, some other family members, all these people lived in Pripyat, and Pripyat was a beautiful, peaceful, full of greenery, nice town. So all these people were thrown in to liquidate the aftermath of the disaster. So by now, all her family members passed away from cancer. Mr. Krylenko, his wife, also was a part of this effort, shared with us that he was able to be treated in Israel. He said that he was given like months to live, but he lived 25 years after that. But his wife, who was also a part of those liquidation efforts, passed away. So there are so many people, so many shadows of Chernobyl that are still there. So back to Alevtina Malawoka, who is right now in Kyiv, and her daughter recorded for us her testimony. She talked about fear. She talked about the realization of what was happening and understanding that she couldn't rescue anyone because even children were separated from parents, put on buses, and sent off to Crimean, I don't know, camps or sanatoriums, but no one accepted them. So they were on the bus, then they were on a train, going nowhere, from place to place. Her daughter added that she remembers being on the bus for 4 days. No stops, no water, no bathroom breaks. And I see a question from Jana. How do people recover from learned helplessness? Well, big question. How do people recover from learned helplessness when it's combined with anger at what they suffered from their own government or from the neighboring country? What are some of the ways that work? Well, I think it's important to name it. It's important to be in touch with what's happening. It's important to monitor yourself. Am I making the right decision for me? Who is this decision? Who will benefit from me doing X, Y, Z? Should I do it? Who am I responsible to? Am I responsible for my children? Am I responsible for the well-being of authorities? Am I covering somebody's behind? Am I really doing something for my country? And nobody says that people don't bring sacrifice for their country, but the price should be really kind of, commensurate with what they actually have. You cannot give more than you have. And being able to really do the correct assessment of what you have to share, I think is important. And basically you do it day by day, you build boundaries with your country. If your country is an abuser. Does it answer your question? And building boundaries, I think, also includes saying no. I actually see refugees from Russia on a regular basis in my clinical practice. I see people who chose to say no to their country. And some of them share their thinking process. What made them say no? And people say, well, it wasn't the necessity. It's not like my country is bleeding and then I have to go and overcome this fear and fight for my country. No, I'm offered to go into somebody else's country territory and fight there with people who just live their lives there. Probably doesn't make sense. The truth of the matter is that over the years, this mentality has been kind of ingrained, and people would start believing that that's the right thing to do, and that's what my country needs. My country needs to go to those other lands, into foreign lands, into somebody else's territory, and do harm to those people, and that's how my country gets by and survives. And I think that this is the problem. The effort to rescue people of Pripyat, people who lived in the vicinity and people who worked in the nuclear plant was done. But it was done on the local level because those orders to get people out did not come right away. They were not clear. People did not know what to do. And also people who risked their lives had no idea what they were going to see. And yes, understandably, that was the first huge nuclear disaster. And yet, there were people in charge who knew, but they chose not to share this knowledge. And information is important. Information is seminal. Information allows us to make choices, informed choices. People around Chernobyl were not given the privilege of the informed choice to risk their lives or lose their lives. Somewhere, the administration knew very well, the scientific departments understood. But other people who were once again thrown, bрошены, to liquidate, sometimes had no idea. One of the presenters shared that there were military leaders, officers, generals who would cry, saying, I just sent those guys to their death. But I did not know at the time. So my understanding that if the country expects you to risk your life, it needs to give you the respect of information. There is a hand. They are not.
Yes, please, Dr. Deutsch.
Okay. Okay. You've done a lot of research on nuclear power plants. In the United States, there's a lot of lobbying going on for what are the so-called new, improved, smaller nuclear power plants. What is your reaction to that? What do you think about the so-called safety of the newer version? Have you done any research on that?
No, of course not. It's not
Oh.
it's not my specialty. It's not my area of expertise at all. However, we live in a dangerous world. I think we need to accept that, and we add to the dangers of this world. However, I think we need to figure out how to make peace with ourselves and find this balance of our comfort zone. Once again, informed choice. Do you choose to live in the vicinity of this nuclear plant? Do you choose to stay away? Do you choose to work there? Do you feel that that's morally right? And kind of exercising those choices is crucial. And to me, this is the kind of the line that defines the free individual within the free country, or somebody who's in this codependent relationship with its country and the government.
Okay. Thanks.
I don't know what answers to asking.
Thank you. More questions, please. More comments. My generation remembers Chernobyl quite well. Of course, as Galina emphasized, we didn't have information then. Well, just like we don't have all of it now. but at this time it was thought that Chernobyl disaster was one of the major developments that pushed Soviet Union to its end. 40 years later, can we say this?
Yes, by all means. But well, I guess it's like Shrug the dragon. Yeah, it's very hard to overcome the dragon, especially when we become the dragon, when we carry these codependency traits within ourselves. So it's very hard to we can state that yes, that's the end. The Soviet Union ended, but no, it was internalized. We still carry. Let's face it. We still carry Soviet Union in some of our actions, in some of our in our thought process, in some of our behaviors, and we carry this fear. We carry this inability sometimes, with all due respect to all of us, but there are still kernels of those this inability to think independently. We are still the product of this kind of collective, I don't want to call it collective unconscious, but the collective mind that makes decisions for us. I think those two, fear and the so-called collective mind. And sometimes we go at great lengths to reach its opposite and to kind of defy all the structures and to say the hell with this government and the hell with the system. I hate the system. I'm not a part of it. And I think that this is also the result of the same country. And that's the colonized mindset. That's where we are. I don't know how many generations it will take to get rid of that.
This was actually my next question, but of course we cannot predict. It depends on what happens heavily and on future upcoming disasters.
Yeah.
For which world is clearly not ready.
Yeah, well, that's
never.
A huge question.
Yes, a lot of questions. Any more comments, please,
Yes.
to this very, very powerful
it's a sad
presentation and
topic, yeah.
A very sad topic, which of course takes us way beyond former Soviet Union.
Yes, well, we did internalize, we carry it within ourselves. Yana wrote in the chat box, how do people recover from learned helplessness? But that's the previous, building boundaries might include realizing that what had happened cannot be changed. Only what a person does going forward can be chosen. The past can be put out in the open and considered, but not changed. That's hard to accept. Yes, by all means, we cannot go back, we cannot undo, we cannot press that undo button. But I had a very interesting experience yesterday. I was present at the presentation, poetry reading essentially, and the person who was reading, their name is Ariel Rose. They're a poet with an interesting background where one grandparent spent years in Gulag and another grandparent was in the concentration from another part of the family, from the other ethnic group, was in the concentration camp for 3.5 years. And I spoke to them after their presentation, and I asked them what it was like to feel the weight, because they mentioned it for a reason, actually. What was it like to feel the weight of those two legacies? The intergenerational trauma that we talk about was present and clear. They verbalized it. And they say something that I really loved. They said that I put a lot of effort there. And you know what? I'm done with the war, with the camps, with the oppression. I'm okay. I closed that door. And I thought, well, that's really hopeful that people can process it, can work through those experiences, can work through those legacies, put them into words, find meaning in what happened, and move on and live their lives. And that's hard, but it's possible. I guess it's possible. And we can be healthy, and we can be emotionally healthy, and we can learn day in and day out to be independent of our governments, but also learn to trust. Because another big part of it is total mistrust, the trust that we have in our bloodstream to the government, to a government, any government. So that's also a feature of codependence. We always wait for the other shoe to drop. We cannot trust. We know that we live in a dangerous world where they can build a nuclear plant in our backyard without us knowing. So I would say, Yana, to all your questions, restoring trust, even though we take risks.
Thank you, Yana. Thank you, Galina. This was a wonderful hour, very impressive, very tragic. And thank you for being with us, and everyone who came to listen and will listen and recording. We wish you well.
We have few more. Yeah, we have one more. Yeah, definitely.
One more? Yes, please.
In the chat box.
Yes.
From Leslie. I can't cite specific statistics about new generations of nuclear plants, but I believe that most, if not all, of the nuclear disasters so far have occurred because of natural disasters, like Fukushima, or design flaws, right, that were made far worse due to some amount of human error. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, obviously nothing is without risk, but there is a strong argument that nuclear power has caused far fewer deaths and injuries than, say, fossil fuel. Absolutely right. Like I said, we live in a dangerous world. We just need to figure out how to trust people who make decisions on our behalf. But we also need to make sure that those people are trustworthy. This is very hard. This is very hard. And I don't know how to mitigate that.
Thank you.
Learn to trust the abusive systems.
Thank you, Galina. Thank you, everyone who came and ask questions. And this was meeting 219 of MUkraine discussion, Marshall University, West Virginia. Thank you, everyone, and try to have a good weekend.
And I put the link in the chat box. This is the link to the webinar. You can listen to it.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.